Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
I'm Amy Morrison. I work at Concerts West, AEG Presents, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 10 WTF. Welcome.
That's right. Welcome to episode 152 of Promoter 101. Happy Monday to you fine folks out there. Hope you're ready for a great podcast. We've got on the pod from Fanscape, Larry Weintraub. He's here talking everything from the heydays of the record business to the present days of artist management and branding. Going to be a great conversation, Dan. Be sure to tune in.
And 3 questions with always on Scott Osburn.
All right, Dan. Here we go.
And away we go.
Hey there, this is Andy Gould, CEO at Spectacle Entertainment, Promoter 101.
Hey, Connor, pop quiz. Where can you listen to Promoter 101?
Well, it's not like anything's changed in the last month, Dan, but fuck it. Here you go. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify and some other places, so quit yanking my leg.
True that, Connor.
I like yanking his leg, apparently, Luke.
I don't know what kind of HR policies are in place over there, Dan, but I'm pretty sure that yeg yanking is a big frowned upon no-no there.
Well, it is important to point out that Connor does... Nope, it's not important to point that out.
No, it's not important to point that out.
If you got something you want to share with us, simply email us at Steiny, that's STEINY, at promoter101.net. And we'll be happy to respond to you. Day, night, weekends, don't worry about it. Just don't expect us to babysit your kids. We're not going to do it.
Not going to happen, Dan. It's not going to happen. And if you got some thoughts and you don't want to email them to us because that's too old school for you, hit us on the social media. You're more than welcome to follow us on Twitter. I'm at W. Luke Pierce. Dan's the Jew. The show's at Promoter 101. You can also find us at Promoters 101. Hit us up.
We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Tumblr. We're on Living Social. We're not on Living Social. We're on LinkedIn. You can find us on the web at promoter101.com. Let's just skip through all the social bullshit.
Living Social, still a thing, apparently.
Marketing on the mind, my friend. Marketing on the mind.
It's Adam Voith from Billions, and I'm on Promoter 101.
It's time to celebrate some birthdays the week of May 21st to 27th, 2019. How about that for a humdinger, Mr. Pierce? What you got?
On Tuesday, the 21st, wishing a happy birthday to Medina Salade and Steve Himmelfarb.
Wednesday, 5/22, Justin Sudds, Jason Hodges, Austin Brown, and Ann Fluke. Hey, that Austin Brown, that name sounds familiar, Luke.
It is indeed. It's the high tenor of Home Free. On Thursday, the 23rd, we're wishing a happy birthday to Eventbrite's Jason Huey.
The 24th, that's a Friday. From Home Free, a whole nother Home Free birthday, Adam Chance. The whole band's turning older, apparently.
It's true. Everybody does get older every year, Dan.
It's a fucking scam, and I hate it. Also, Seth Weiner, Benji Gold, and Scott Leslie from the land of Madison, Wisconsin, where men are men and sheep are scared.
And on Saturday, the 25th, wishing a happy birthday to the Pitbull of comedy, Mr. Bobby Slayton.
The 26th, that's Sunday, Live Nation's John Reens and Danny Hest.
And on Monday, the 27th, wishing a happy birthday to the Feldman Agency's Jason Furman.
Jason Furman. Good people, Jason Furman. Good people.
He is good people.
Wonderful wishes to all of you from your friends here at Promoter 101. Call your mother.
Call your mother.
Adam Kornfeld. I'm at Artist Group International, AGI in New York, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101 Flashbacks.
Episode 60.
Louis Messina.
You know, my style of doing business a little different, where I am very transparent. You know, I always say, if there is $1 on the ground, you're going to get your share and I'm going to get my share. It's worked out. So my whole career, jokingly said this, is like 6 degrees of George Strait, because, you know, through George Strait, I met the Dixie Chicks, Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, Kenny Chesney, Taylor Swift. Taylor was an opening act when she just turned 17. She toured with George Strait. So that's where I met Taylor. First night, here's this young 17-year-old. Hi, I'm Taylor. And she's out there, she walked on stage with just an acoustic guitar. Her band was there. George plays it around. And second song, she had everybody eating out of the palm of her hands, George Strait, Ronnie Millsap, and Taylor Swift. I saw her work ethic. George would allow artists to sign, meaning like do autographs. And she was the last one to leave the building every single night. And she was the first one in the production office every day, writing hand notes to everybody, calling radio stations all over the country after she's already done 2 or 3 radio interviews. Her mom and dad were out there. They would talk to me all the time about, how do you do this? How do you do that? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And I just fell in love with Taylor.
This is Andy Levitt with Live Nation Comedy. You're listening to Promoter 101.
Our first segment this week, we've got 3 questions with Always On's Scott Osburn.
Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I haven't had you yet, sir. Don't start those rumors. Are you ready to play our game?
Yes, I am ready.
Fire away.
Okay, so the first question I have is, how does streaming success translate and or relate to actual ticket sales? And are there any key indicators to note?
Great question, Scott. I think the way that we talk about streaming in a modern vernacular is really the way that we were talking about radio spins or sound scans in the past. It's really just another measure of consumption. And so when you look at consumption by region using some of the tools that streaming platforms like Spotify provide inside their Spotify for Artists platform, which managers have free access to just by claiming social accounts and going to artist.spotify.com, or similarly for Apple Music, they've got a pretty in-depth heat map that you can use at artist.apple.com. Same kind of back-end dashboard. Similar situation going on with Google and their Creator Studio. These are all like points of data that can really help you measure where your consumption is the strongest. Now, unfortunately, they are in most cases limited to a certain number of markets, just like the way Facebook caps the number of likes by city to the top 50 cities. You don't get necessarily the full picture, the point of consumption, but it gives you a picture of where you should be routing tours. And you can use metrics like followers in a market, subscribers in a market, watch time on YouTube. You can use monthly listeners on Spotify or plays in Apple Music. And from that, you can kind of develop this matrix of understanding of where your consumption truly lies. There are a few services out there that do aggregate all of those consumption points that are available for fees, like BuzzAngle Music, for example, giving you kind of an overall look at chart in streaming platforms. If you've got a distributor or a label in the picture, you can get the same kind of data and information more aggregated for all types of consumption. But I don't necessarily think we found the perfect metric for like the actual correlation between ticket sales and streaming success in a market. And it's also really difficult to find ways to engage the data sets in which you have in this. Spotify is very close to chest in regards to marketing opportunities around superfans. They have a fan first pre-sale program that, is usually a longer lead to set up and is selective in terms of the minimum requirements for monthly listeners, followers, or streams. Not all the platforms are ready to engage and hand over all this amazing data they have about their consumers for other revenue sources for the artists, like ticket sales or merchandise sales. So for me, streaming is just one of those places that tells the story of consumption and it guides me in my routing decisions. And if I'm lucky with Spotify fan first pre-sales or free Pandora liners, I can leverage those particular situations to gain additional marketing support and help me sell more tickets.
Look, it really has to do genre per genre. Pop numbers and hip hop numbers are massive. Sometimes they're not as big in some of the other genres. So you can't really compare apples to oranges because some things are getting millions and millions of plays and still can't sell out 1,000-seat clubs. And in other cases, they're packing out amphitheaters and arenas and stadiums. So it doesn't have a direct correlation. But genre for genre, you can kind of pick up a trend. And certainly the internet is making it so people can sample more. It's not just what the radio stations are serving up to us as our new favorite bands. You have a little bit better chance to find things on your own. So it definitely puts out there more traffic and a lot more to hear, and you can find your own thing a little bit better that way.
I agree.
What's your second question?
Okay. What is the future of live look like on the venue side with venues like the MSG Sphere, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and how amps, arenas, and stadiums have evolved since the Pace and Clear Channel Live Nation days? What's next? What will we see in the next, let's say, 5 to 20 years?
Tech is only going to get better, right? So I don't know if anybody knows what's going to happen with the MSG, with the Sphere yet. I think You're going to see shows that have to be created just for that production. High-level shows that are going to have residencies. Because who's going to have production built for those spheres? It's like nobody's going to be on tour that's going to roll through. It's like they're going to just have to be programmed into those rooms. So things are going to have to be created just for that. And that's why they're putting them into those Uber A markets, right? London, Vegas, what have you. I think that's more of a specialty thing. I think what you're going to see as far as concert venues is more video, higher end production, more moving pieces. Like the concert world and Broadway are going to kind of come together in that way where the things where they build Broadway theaters around the shows, you're going to start to see venues that have the ability to house more of those things, those features, amazing video, amazing production, moving pieces, flying in from different levels and millions of points and handling weight that's absurd. It's going to be a fun thing to watch as it continues to grow because the mind is blown away because the only thing we can handle is the limits of our imagination.
I agree. I think that's great. I think the experiential side of the business is really exciting.
What's your third question?
Do we get to a point where we reach critical mass in delivering content to the masses? Are we already there? In correlation to that, do we think that festivals are negatively affecting the club and touring space?
Different people are going to have different answers to the second part of the question. So let's start there. If you own a club, you're going to say, yes, the festivals are fucking me in the summer. They're taking all of my acts away and then they're giving us radius clauses. So I can't get any content to fill my calendar. From the other side of it, looking at it, if an act plays Coachella and they come back over and they play the Observatory 6 months later, way more people are going to know who they were just because they happen to have gotten to be on Coachella's poster, right? So for the night, yeah, it probably sucked for that venue. They lost the play. But for the long term of the artist in the market, probably a bigger artist because they played the festival. It's a long-term, short-term kind of a thing, and you can't just have one or the other. Sure, that night you lost the act. But in the long run, the act was probably going to be worth more tickets because of the exposure. So I think that's the long-term win. And for the industry, that's what you got to focus on. What's best for the act? What's best for the market all along? The club owner that lost the play is still going to be pissed off because he lost the play. Ain't no two ways about that. As far as your critical mass part, let's go to that now. Is there too much? Are we seeing too much content out there? I think no. We haven't reached the critical mass yet where it's gotten to be a point where traffic is affecting other traffic. I mean, sure, every time you put something else in the market, it's going to take away opportunity cost from seeing something else. But people are still coming to shows. Shows are profitable. More venues are popping up. More promoters are doing business. You're seeing it on all levels in the theaters, in the clubs, in the arenas, in the stadiums, although volume seems to be down this year in the stadiums. Just there are only so many superstar acts, and they've been out the last 4 or 5 years. So I think we're seeing less volume in the stadiums this year, but I imagine it'll be back in the next couple of years. We're just having a down year right now. But in general, more volume, more shows, more going on. And it just, people keep coming. People love the live experience. That thing called live, people love. So I don't think we're there yet. Will we get there? The laws of diminishing return guarantee at some point we will hit critical mass where every added show is less people going out. It'll happen at some point. When that happens, only the economists can truly guess. And it's still just a guess because at the end of the day, do you want to go see that band? Do you want to get off the couch? And is there a Game of Thrones that's keeping you inside instead of going out? Because it takes something that mind-blowing to keep people at home away from the shows. Otherwise, people want to be together. They want to be at the shows. And God bless them. We need that revenue coming in to support this massive industry's overhead that we all have.
I agree. That's great.
Scott, thank you so much for being on Promoter 101. What are you working on right now that's exciting? Anything that you can pitch?
So right now we're focusing on our 10-year anniversary of Lights All Night, the music festival in Dallas. We're just working on a huge lineup. And then I've got 2 new projects and alternative venues that we're hoping to bring online in 2020.
Looking forward to it, Scott. Thanks so much for talking to us on Promoter 101.
Thanks, Dan.
Scott is got good things happening down there in Dallas. I'm thrilled to have him here on Promoter 101, and I really kind of like the name of his company, Always On. You got to ask yourself, Luke, what is he always on?
I think that question varies from person to person.
I'm guessing it's happiness.
Mr. Happy. Oh, wait, no, that's next.
Well done.
This is Alex Hardy, one of the partners at Coda, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Hey, Dan, it's time for the least patronizing award in the industry. It's the unveiling of the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Who we got this week?
Oh, this week, I wanted to shine a spotlight on APA's Andrew Ellis, a.k.a. Mr. Happy. He's the king of emo rock, making him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. And by the way, he's probably the only person that would get grumping knowing that we were giving him this honor, which makes it even that much more fun, I would think. Don't you, Luke?
I would think so, Dan. Well-deserved award, Mr. Happy indeed. Congratulations on Badass of the Week.
Adam Wilkes with AEG, based in Asia, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Up next in our featured interview this week, we've got a veteran of more than 30 years in the music business, starting his time as VP for Artist Development at A&M Records, working with acts like Sheryl Crow, Gin Blossoms, Blues Traveler, Soundgarden, Sting, MXPX, and so many more. You might know him as the CIO of Fanscape before they sold to Omnicom. He's here to talk about the days of big record business, artist management, branding, and more. Please welcome the podcast from Fanscape, Mr. Larry Weintraub.
How you doing, man?
Steiny, how you doing?
So this is fun. We've known each other for, God, it's got to be 27, 28 years.
Something like that, yeah. I start to feel old if I think about it too long.
Oh, man. We don't get old, just the acts do. The music industry and you have had a long path together, and you've changed hats and done different things, but you've always somehow found your way to the middle of it.
Yeah, that's about right.
How'd you find your way to the business?
You know, it's one of those things. I couldn't play an instrument. I tried my best when I was a little kid. I went to a concert, probably, The Clash and The Who was one of the first concerts I went to, and I saw these people walking backstage. They had these little passes hanging around their neck, and I said, that's what I want to do in my life.
You want to wear a pass?
I want to wear a pass. I want to get back there. There's something cool going on back there. I just sort of navigated my way through it. Started managing bands and promoting concerts when I was 15 years old in Santa Monica, California. Worked at a record store in high school, went to college at UC San Diego, did everything you could do there, promoted concerts, ran a record store, worked for the radio station, the newspaper, got a job out of college working at a record company, started managing bands, bigger bands, more professional size bands. Record company imploded to some extent or was sold off. I started a company, got out of music for a little bit, and now I'm back in it, on the other side of it. I always look at the 15-year-old Larry Weintraub who would have thought the worst thing in the world was a band would be sponsored by something or be promoting a product. And now here I am many years later, and I'm helping those brands navigate how to get into the music business.
Something about 15-year-old you may have thought that was the worst thing you could do, but I'm guessing 15-year-old you might actually be proud of how you're protecting the band's brand and matching them with something that the 15-year-old you wouldn't have such a problem with.
Yeah, I think the 15-year-old me is always here. Here's how I approach everything, and I always have, from a concert promoter to a record company guy to a brand person, is how is the experience better for the fan? I've always been a fan, and it's all about that. So yes, I'm going to help an artist navigate that. I'm going to help a brand navigate that. But is it making the experience better? Am I going to enjoy the show better? Am I enjoy that artist better? Am I going to learn something? Did I get something for free? Did I get something I didn't have before? That's the perspective. And as a fan, that's what I would want.
I'm guessing you don't remember this, but Aspen Live years ago,
right? You
and me at the St. Regis Bar, and a handful of other people sitting around a table. I want to say Left Sets and maybe Andy Summers.
Yeah.
And you saying to a very young me, you got to be able to look back on this years from now and say, did the way we do that feel right? Because don't worry about the extra $10 you're going to make on the show today. You're not going to care about that 20 years from now. You're going to care about the vibe of how it played. And that's when you decide whether you spend the extra money or not. I don't know if you remember it or not, but I remember that conversation very vividly.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but it's really nice to hear. I remember spending a lot of time with you at those conferences in Aspen and those being a wonderful place. But yeah, I think that's sort of how I've lived my life. I haven't made as much money as maybe some, or maybe I could have. It's always, am I proud of what I'm doing? Did I make the experience better for other people? Sort of this thing about me that I'd rather have other people have a good time, and that's how I have a good time. That philosophy that the money will come is definitely true. Be proud of what you do. Be the best at what you do. Probably a young Dan Steinberg, I would have said, be the best at what you do.
I think the line was, nobody's ever going to be mad at you because you had too much quality.
Wow. That's nice to know I said that.
It stuck with me for a long time.
Right.
And Andy Summers turned to me and said, remember, Circle Jerk show tickets are only $10. Be careful. So I could definitely feel the different sides of finance on that argument on both sides of that table really quick. It's like, do what you can, but at the same time, remember, you're on a budget. You're not promoting the Eagles.
Yeah. I do. Just even hearing the name Andy Summers just warms my heart. Talk about one of my mentors, one of the he was the agent for many of my bands. He taught me so much. He had such good philosophy. We take care of the people that take care of us. That was his philosophy. And, throughout my career, what this business is like. Managers change, agents change, all those people change. Hopefully you align yourself with the ones that you helped and they helped you back, or vice versa.
Yeah, there's an interesting club, and we'll get back to your career in a second because we're definitely here to focus on that. But I noticed that there's a handful of people throughout my career that changed jobs, changed careers, whatever, but they continue to be around and nobody ever loses touch. You, Jim Louie, Left Sets, Bill Silva, Andy Summers, it's like Vince Bannon. There's just a string of people that have always been there.
Right.
And it's like they're always still friends, and nothing has ever happened in anybody's interaction that would have ever hurt that. And it's always this quality of business that however you interact with somebody, the friendship was always there first. And that's kind of a cool thing to watch.
Yeah. If you think about how some of that started, we're all very young in the business, in our early 20s, a lot of us, navigating our way through the business. So on my side, I worked for a record company, and I ran a department called Artist Development. And you could argue whether or not artist development exists today, but at that time, it was taking all the bands that are on the label. A&M Records was the label I was on. And you take the ones that not everybody is focused on. You've got these huge stars at that time. We had Sting and Bryan Adams and these big stars, but you have a lot of developing acts. We had Soundgarden and Sheryl Crow and Blues Traveler. And then you go
which
around.
Don't sound like development acts at this point, which means you did your job.
But at the time, nobody knew who these acts were. Very few, people knew who they were. And then you go around the room in the ones that, at Geffen Records or Interscope Records or RCA Records or whatever it was, and we all became friends. Some of it was born out of Polestar Conference. We would go to Polestar and we'd all get together and we'd talk about our issues, bus prices, and does a band do a bus or a van, or do you pay for this, or which promoters, or who's the opening act? Can we share, will you take my act as an opening act? And we just became friends. And it just sort of grew from there. It started as like some of us were record company people in the touring adjacent world with artist development. Then we knew the promoters and the agents. And, Steiny, like you and myself and Nick Light and all these people grew up together, and we formed a bond, and we're still friends to this day. Some are still in the business, some are not in the business, some are at different places, like myself in the business. But we've all helped each other out. We all talked very honestly. We learned early, if you do something that messes with your friend, they won't be your friend. And so we just took care of each other, talked very honestly. Aspen Live, the Jim Louie, to his credit, took the ball and ran with it. We started this thing at Polestar where we just had conversations with each other and then drinks at a bar or whatever it was. And Jim turned it into something in Aspen, Colorado, where we sort of went out of our way to get there. And we bonded. We had heavy discussions. Then we skied. Then we came back, and it was, it's a testament to these people, like you said, that are always there. We've always been close with each other.
So let's go back to San Diego and your college days, because UC San Diego, a lot of great industry came out of that place. Is that really where the spark happened for you? When you went from being 15-year-old you, did you know that San Diego had that music program that could really develop that?
I did not know San Diego had that. I knew that I wanted to be in music, and I am lucky. I got to UC San Diego. San Diego is a really interesting city. It's adjacent to Los Angeles, but somehow it's another world away, too, in terms of an act could be playing a 6,000-seat amphitheater in Los Angeles and be struggling to sell 500 tickets in San Diego. And it was really sort of confusing that happened. But I learned that sort of getting ahead of myself. I went to San Diego, growing up in Los Angeles, it was 2 hours away. And I threw myself into music pretty quickly and what they had to offer. I came there. I think REM was playing in our gym, and I was like, wow, this is the school I'm going to. They have concerts like that on campus. I immediately signed up for the concert committee. I was, sort of an usher or something that for about 6 months. And then the guy who ran the committee retired, and I put myself in the mix to run it. And next thing I know, I'm like the youngest person ever to run the concert committee there. And that was the jumping off point. As I learned within months of doing this, you're following in the footsteps of Mark Geiger and Bill Silva, guys who had been there a few years earlier and done the same thing. I learned that that's just something that was, a bonus of my passion for music. The other thing is just to know why I did it. I'm a live music junkie. It's always been live. Yes, I've been with record companies and other sides of the business, but to me, it's about that concert experience. There's nothing that replaces being in a show, watching it and being surrounded by others like you. So that was what I want to do. And not only did I want to do concerts myself, I wanted to be able to go to concerts in San Diego. So what I did is I start getting to know the people at San Diego State or Bill Silva or the Avalon Attractions was the name of the company at that time, became Live
Brian
Nation.
Murphy.
Right. And the reps there and, the guy that ran the Bacchanal, the big club in San Diego. So I just networked. I'm like, you want to come to my shows? Can I go to your shows? I really just wanted free tickets to shows. And that was, this networking thing that I think has been a big chunk of my life that was born in San Diego.
That's an interesting thing. San Diego really had this vibe, and I still think there's a little bit of it there, but it seems like it's a whole different world now. That somehow they seem like the markets were closer, LA and San Diego, back in the day.
Yeah, they were. Everyone's going to come to San Diego. It's a good live town. Again, you would sell less tickets for whatever reason. You would get the same bands, but they play smaller places. So somewhere was paying a big place in LA would play a smaller place in San Diego. It's a great way to see Sun Nirvana at a club that legally holds 80 people. They stuffed 150 in there, but that was the kind of thing you could get in San Diego that, was a bonus of being close to a major city like Los Angeles, but still not quite as Mecca.
Your success rate with bands seems awesome, and I think your bio is the bands that did great. Who are the bands that you loved that just didn't break for whatever reason that you were involved with?
There's so many, and breaking is a relative term.
Commercial success on a level where they're a household name.
But, I could say a band like Monster Magnet was this great rock band.
And they were doing 1,000 tickets around the country.
Exactly. So did they break? Not in the sense like they didn't become Metallica, but they were, they had a huge loyal fan base. They could do significant numbers. They had a quasi, radio hit or two later, in the career. But that's a band I loved and I worked so hard on. And so many punk rock bands, my core punk rock and heavy metal were my things. So Face to Face and MXPX, bands that I worked really hard with that I know you promoted a lot of are, again, they're still touring to this day. They still do a couple thousand tickets in markets, not household names, but really successful. And I'm so in love with those bands and always have been.
I can't not get excited when I hear Disconnected.
Yeah.
I just can't. Let's talk about Jim Garneau, because you guys had an awesome connection and did some great work together.
Yeah, if I had to put on my list of mentors, Jim would be probably number one, Mark Geiger number two, and one of the ways I came to Jim Garneau was because of Mark Geiger. So it's sort of all interconnected. But Garneau took a chance on me. I was an intern at A&M Records. When I was at UC San Diego, I came up for the summer intern for a woman named Mary L. Pastor that got me into the building. She introduced me to Jim. You need to know Jim. Then I went back to college at UC San Diego. Turns out that Jim had a lock, like really a grip on where bands played. This is something I didn't know about what a record company could do until later, that he determined where a band like Soul Asylum that I was in love with as well, or Soundgarden, where they played. And I remember having to go to Jim to beg him to let me do a Soul Asylum show at UC San Diego. And that's how it got on his radar. And then as soon as I graduated, I went a little long, an extra semester at UCSD. I graduated, and 2 weeks later, I started at A&M Records. Interviewed me a couple weeks before I was graduating, said, I've got a job. Nick Light had the job. Nick had left to go tour manage. I took Nick's job, and Jim just, I walked in that door. I said, where do I sit? He goes, right there, right, next to me out there. And he gave me amazing advice. He said, when I'm not here and I travel a lot, I want you to read everything. I want you to know everything. Everybody that calls here, I want you to know who they are. I want you to research them. He was sort of quietly managing Social Distortion while we were at A&M Records. So he had two jobs, and I'm a huge Social D fan. So I said to him, if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. And then he just basically said, okay, here you go. And he dumped everything on me. So it was trial by fire. He threw me right in there. And, the band was on tour with Neil Young, and I had to figure out, how to get them merchandise on the road, how to navigate, all kinds of craziness. So he taught me the ropes of a record company. He taught me the ropes of management at a higher level. He taught me concert promoting, at a higher level than I'd ever done before. An incredible mentor. We did that I think we were together for about 4 years. He encouraged me. He said, I've got Social D. Yes, you're doing a lot of work, but you need to find your own bands, which is how I found Korn and then Offspring. And together we had this really great run for a couple of years. Then he broke off and went to start his own company. It was one of those decisions you make in your life. My decision was, I'm going to stay back because Jim is Jim. And if I'm ever going to cut my own way in this world, I probably have to do it on my own. And that's what I did. And that's what we separated. But we've stayed friends for many, many years. And I look back at that guy taught me a big chunk of what I know.
The live show of the acts you're talking about are all magnificent. Is that where it started for you? It's got to be good live.
Without a doubt. An interesting thing about working in the live side is when you have a band that becomes a great live band, you put them out there and you tell the story. Part of it is I had to get them out there. I watched them develop. They became great live acts. Then I had to tell the story internally. I had to walk around to all the departments, the radio promotion, the retail. These guys are clicking, like people are coming back. They're doing bigger numbers. So yeah, without a doubt, it all emanates from a great live show and a great performance. One of the offshoots of doing that for A&M Records acts was I got to know all the concert promoters. And what's an interesting thing, and I don't think it's a secret anymore, but at that time, one of my edges was I got to know all the concert promoters. And, I would go to Denver or I'd go to Seattle or go to all these places. I knew every city in America by their clubs and by their theaters and by the promoters, and became friends with the promoters who would then turn me on to other bands. And as you can imagine, I started to do a little A&R and signed bands, but they were live acts more than they were recorded acts, right? Whether or not they had a hit was secondary to whether or not they could draw an audience. And that was, at the core, if you trace my life all the way back, it's always been about the live performance of the show.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other moments, right? And some of the people in the industry. So you're tight with Kevin Lyman, you're tight with Paul Tillett. Like, talk about guys that love a GA open floor.
Yeah. In LA specifically, Jim taught me this. We promoted some of our own shows. I would just go in and buy out the Roxy or buy out the Whiskey or the Troubadour. Because again, I knew I was going to end up with a bunch of industry people in there. So I'd go into those places, and I'm not a concert promoter, but I knew enough about that. So I befriended Paul Tillett, at Golden Voice at that time. I did a ton of shows with Paul, with Kevin Lyman. If I were going to do my own shows, Kevin would do the production. We'd come in, we did shows in our parking lot at A&M Records. So those people, I always say we grew up together. I think there's this through line through my life is you find the people that are like you, that have the work ethic of you, that are friends with you, and you stay true to them. And, anybody I tell growing up in the business, if somebody says, how do I get started? Whatever it is, I said, make good friends with everybody, especially people your age or who are also starting out, because you will grow together. They will be presidents of companies someday. You will be a president. You will always be friends. That's just a consistent in my life.
Let's talk about the inverse of the industry. So when you were working in music, particularly at the label, bands would tour to support the album. The shows were really about the album. You doing a show in your parking lot at A&M wasn't about making money in the parking lot. It was about getting people to see your band.
Yes.
The industry has turned.
Yes.
Bands make albums, so there's something to write about, so people will come out to the show. They actually make new albums to support the tour, don't tour to support the album. It has completely inverted the industry. The label has become so less important in the cycle of the artist, where a good artist that has a fan base can do it without a label now. I don't necessarily recommend it if you got a label interested, but you can pull it off.
Yeah, at that time, and really historically for a long time until recently, the album was the way you made money. Selling albums was the way you made money. So touring was a way to get people exposed to your album. And artist development really was doing at a record company was getting an artist into a city so that when they're there, they could meet the record store, they could meet the radio station, they could do press, they could shake a lot of hands, have dinners, drinks, whatever it is, so that people talked about them in that city. That was the business. And
you think
ultimately,
that's a lost art?
It is, but every now and then I meet an artist that I get, an artist that knows how to shake hands, knows how to remember people. And I think that exists still. But there's a couple things. One, today, yes, the live thing is much bigger, much more profitable. You can play bigger rooms and make more money. Who would have thought you could charge $100+ for a concert ticket? Back then, we were trying to keep them under $10. So it has changed. But, going back to your lost art question, then I'm going to put it on the artist. If you think about that word artist development, you're trying to develop that artist. They have already a talent making good music, but are they a good performer? Are they a good meet and greeter? Are they making impressions that make people want to like them more? The number one person in my career that I've seen do that is Sheryl Crow. I've never seen anyone like that. If she met you at an after party or a radio station and she saw you 3 years later, she would remember everything about you. And that's an incredible talent.
Just a photograph of memory like that?
Yeah. And I've heard that people like Bill Clinton have that sort of talent. Well, Cheryl had that talent. So to me, it was sort of inevitable. She had good music and she had that talent. It was inevitable it would happen. There are probably horror stories of many artists that had that. It didn't happen. But, I was lucky enough to be around a few that had that. And that's really artist development. But we had patience. We put a ton of money into all of those acts. I don't know if that money is there anymore. And I don't think any record company can afford to do it the way they did, because again, the money was in the record. And if ultimately you're going to have a hit and it was going to sell 5 or 10 million copies around the world, you could make that up, but it's a different world.
Let's talk about your entrepreneur days of Fanscape and how that came to be, because this is exciting stuff.
Yeah. So when I was at A&M Records, one of the things I started doing was helping bands keep track of their fans. If you track from 1990 before, historically there was no way of knowing who bought your records. There just wasn't. You put out an album, you hope a song gets on the radio, you might do a sniping poster around town, you hope Rolling Stone writes about it, and people come to it.
That was the way you can know is what markets are selling the best.
Right. If a band sold 1 million records, then the next record comes out and there's no way to reach those people. You just hope, again, gets on the radio, repeat. And I was like, why don't we keep track of fans? Now, we know the story of the Grateful Dead. They were probably the kings of doing this, right? They kept track of their fans. They would sell shows directly. Maybe 10 bands in history had a true fan club, a true fan connection. Pearl Jam had it. Kiss. Yeah, we always talk about the Kiss Army. Beatles going back. But, at scale, nobody did that. So at A&M, I think the band I really started on was Gin Blossoms. Gin Blossoms would go out and I could see every night they would kill it. So I gave them these little 3x5 cards. They put them at the merch counter, your name, your address. We weren't even doing emails at that point. And what I was starting to do
this was like 93 when they were starting to really
exactly
happen.
Right. So they were on a tour with a band called Toad the Wet Sprocket. I remember Toad was exploding and Gin Blossoms were going on every night before them. And they were like lighting up that audience, which is a tough thing to do as an opening act, to get the audience to like you. And Toad was doing these things where Toad, if you went over to their merch counter, they would give you a cassette single. And I think they asked you for your information too. So I sort of copied it. I copied like, let's grab this. They'd come back. They'd give me hundreds, sometimes thousands of these 3x5 cards. And myself and interns would just start inputting them into a database. I started to do that for a few bands, MXPX and others on A&M. We started to do that. Well, I started a company in 98 called Fanscape. Terry Dry and I, who were both at A&M Records, started this company. And the idea was, let's do this at scale. Let's go to all the bands in the world and say, we'll help you keep track of your fans with this database so that when you come back, you'll be able to tell fans, we have a new record, we have a new tour date, we have t-shirts, whatever it was. It was all this philosophy I had. There would come a time.
You were mining data for the first time.
I believe we were, yeah.
Well, at least the first time in the music industry.
Definitely at scale. And the idea was when your next anything comes out, people will get it from the band. I really saw this coming. I saw a time when anything I want to know as a fan of a band, I will get from the band. Early days of websites. Then in 99, around April of that year, we had a CTO, that we hired, Chief Technical Officer of our company, and he built a database, an online database, and we could start putting email addresses in. Early days, but we started to build this. And before long, we had acts that we were working with that had tens of thousands of fans in a database that we could communicate that their music was coming out, their tour date was going on sale, that you could buy their merchandise, all these things. And that was really the genesis of Fanscape. It started on something I learned at A&M. We turned it into a business and we grew it over time. And then we did the same thing for tours and we did it for festivals. We were there for Coachella. We were there for Bonnaroo, the Warped Tour. We were the early marketing companies for that, a part company for those entities as well.
You guys found great success, and at some point you found a buyout, right?
We did, yeah. So interesting is, that company ran it for many, many years. In 2000, it's called 2007, 2008. That was really when Napster and that world that sort of, really devastated the music industry. And our bread and butter was we were paid by record companies. We were sometimes paid by the artists themselves. And the money had dried up. Record companies weren't making much money. So they were cutting back. So we started morphing into brand work. That was really my foray into brands. We started working with AT&T and MasterCard and Samsung and some of these people that were trying to reach fans. They were doing deals with music, and we got more and more out of the music industry, more into the brand side. And because we were doing that, we attracted the attention of big advertising companies that we were sort of treading on their territory. It's where Terry and I like, maybe we should align with something like this if we're going to survive in this world.
So how'd the deal come to be? Obviously, you connected the dots that there was a path there.
Yeah, there was a turning point where we were working on this AT&T project, and all of a sudden we had it all yanked from us. An agency came in and said, Fanscape, who are these guys? And they yanked it away from us. And that was this moment where I said to Terry, if we're going to go into this side of the world, we better align with a big advertising agency, or this will keep happening.
We're going to get crushed.
Yeah. So we started being courted, dual. Like some courted us, we were looking at others. And the biggest company really in America is a big company with, called Omnicom. Has this really, ominous name, but they own a big majority of the advertising agencies. And, companies we were dealing with sort of kept coming up that they were an Omnicom. And there were a couple in there, but the one that raised their hand is a company called the Marketing Arm, that we also call TMA for short. And, the guy that runs that company, Ray Clark, is a huge music fan. He saw that his industry needed to become more digital. We were a digital-centric company, running all these online databases and fan club management and all kinds of, we now call influencer marketing. We were doing very early, and he brought us in to help digitize, if you will, his company. And we've been there, I've been there ever since. It's been a nice marriage of an advertising marketing company with the biggest brands in the world, and me bringing in, music and social media and that kind of stuff.
What multiplier did you get? I know you're not going to answer that.
Well, I won't tell you the exact numbers, but I'll tell you this. We hear these stories about, Facebook buying companies and Google buying companies, or Live Nation, buying companies. And I can't speak even, Dan, to your situation, but I think people, your friends probably think you made all this money. And what I learned is, no, they don't give you this big check up front. If I had a product, maybe they pay you for that product. I had a service. So the company was myself and Terry. It wasn't this great IP that we had that they could take and run with. So what they do is they give you this earnout, this multiple year, like, work with us. We're going to let you into our world. You're going to get exposure to potentially more money. And if you make money over this 3 to 5 year period, you will make more money on the other side. So it encourages you to work really hard during that time period to try to maximize that. And I think we did well. I'm still working. I didn't make enough to retire, but I'm very proud of what we did, and I'm proud of where we are today, and I'm proud of the company we've integrated into.
Well, before we all feel sorry for you, I'm pretty sure that Brad Pitt's one of your neighbors.
How'd you hear that? Did Vince tell you that?
Next to Vince. Vince Bannon's one of your neighbors. So
yes.
I'm not exactly going to start a GoFundMe page for you.
But that said, if you're going to call me out there, I'm going to say I bought my house 25 years ago. He did buy it the same year as me. I've never met him, but it's not like this Tony neighborhood that is just, we both sort of bought when it was not the greatest neighborhood.
Okay, so you're on the other side. You're an employee of a company that you used to own, but first you were an owner, then you were a partner, then you earned out. So you got to slowly morph on how it was. But I imagine they probably, since you're still there, they give you a fair amount of flexibility to do what you do because you're an innovator and an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think that the number one thing, and I appreciate that, is I'm an entrepreneur at heart. It goes way back to being 13, 14 years old. So I like to build things. Guy Ray, that founded the marketing arm where I reside, built a company and sold the company to Omnicom himself. So he's an entrepreneur. I am building a division. He came to me 3 years ago and said, music is a thing. I'm hugely passionate music. And we have clients, big clients, and I'm noticing them doing deals with Live Nation, doing deals with iHeartRadio. They're navigating music. I don't know if they know exactly what they're doing, and I'd like us to be significant in this space. And I'd like you to build this for me. I didn't want to do it for a while. I sort of was tired of the music industry, whether it was egos, whether it was different reasons. But I took a look and I started meeting with big companies, senior people at big brands, and realizing they'd done these big deals, but they didn't really understand what they'd bought. And they didn't understand maybe what it's like to work with Live Nation. They didn't understand what it's like to work with talent, with a musician. It reminded me a lot of the early music business days. A radio guy wanted you just to have the band there and show up at a radio station. That radio guy didn't understand that the band drove all night in a van and they were tired. They didn't know where they were and blah, blah, blah. It's sort of like that today is a lot of people don't understand what a manager needs to get, and how protective they are of the artists. And that's why they make the decisions they do. Or Live Nation wants to accomplish this at a festival or whatever it is. So I found myself at a rare spot where I knew both sides of the fence, you know?
You could speak advertising and you could speak to the artist.
So sort of like when I was at a record company, I could speak record company speak, I could speak artist speak because I was also manager. So I knew both sides. I feel like I'm in this rare spot today where I know both sides. And that is what I've brought. And so it's entrepreneurial because we're building it. It is hard to explain to a brand why to do this, why music is definitely where you want to be because that's where your customers are, but it's very delicate. There's a lot of people that want to take your money. There's a lot of people that, you know, are getting handed money from brands all the time. So you've got to be very, very careful if you want to maximize that investment. And again, I just feel like I'm building something. I have a little less worry about all the overhead and stuff that I used to at Fanscape, but I have to grow a business. So I'm motivated by growth. I'm motivated that I'm doing something that I don't think exists in any grand way. You can't point to the best brand music agency. There's a lot of people doing it, but I think there's room to be the best. And anything I do, I just want to be the best at it.
Let's circle back to music for a minute because you did manage some acts that we didn't even touch on. You and me were doing a lot of work together at this point. Hippos, which was one of my favorite ska bands, but they never really broke the bank, but they were great live. Taking Back Sunday and Midtown, like, were really crushing the ballroom, especially Taking Back Sunday, to the point where they're now still headlining like amphitheater, like packages with the Used and stuff. And really aggressively live, great bands. And I remember having the fights with you and Ellis about what venue. And there was never just they weren't fights so much as plotting and we have to take 2 days off in this market because we have to play that ballroom. If we don't play that ballroom, it's not worth playing the market. We don't want to play that room. We need to play that ballroom. Always so locked in on if the band has to be perceived in that market correctly, or it's going to take us an extra year to build them there. And the vision of understanding that and that it was worth taking the Friday night off so you could play the Sunday, just have the right room. It's always amazing to me where it was, screw it, we got to get 6 shows in this week no matter what.
Right.
And it was always a different way to look at it than most managers. And I always kind of appreciated we should play the Showbox in Seattle, or no, we got to play the Commodore in Vancouver. It should really be the Crystal in Portland. Like, those are the vibes we're looking for. And we're going to play the Fillmore on this night, so how has it got to work?
Right.
We're going to play the right rooms no matter how long it takes to, like, make that week work. And maybe we'll fit a Eugene in on the off night or something.
Right.
So go back to what you learned from Garno?
Yeah, without a doubt. And it goes back to being a kid, where you would go to the shows at the places you knew. And, I credit that whole era at Fanscape. We also had a management division called AMP Management, and Jillian Newman ran that, and she still manages, Taking Back Sunday to this day. And Jillian worked with me at A&M Records, and Jillian was sort of my A&R source. She brought so many bands to me at A&M, and she managed the Hippos and all those things like that. So I want to make sure I give her the credit for all that, and she still is. I still just saw her 2 days ago, and I'm so impressed with Taking Back Sunday and what they do and the longevity and just how great they are. But I have this admiration for promoters and admiration for venues in a city and what it means to that city. So, you've heard me say St. Andrews Hall or, Lounge Acts or 7th Street Entry in Minneapolis, or, I knew every club in America because those were legendary. That's where bands came from. That's where the Replacements came from in Minnesota, or what Smashing Pumpkins came from in Chicago, or whatever, that is. And I wanted the bands I work with to emanate from there as well. So concentrated on that, doing that. And that's always been my focus. One thing I remember Jim and I went through this on Offspring. We had a belief. It was our artist development belief at A&M Records. Play small and build up. You're going to do the 400-seater, then you're going to do the 800-seater, then the 1,500-seater. Hopefully you rise up to the 3,000-seater. That was, sort of in artist development. You're going to get to that level. Then if you get bigger than that, it's sort of out of our realm. So the bands we manage, that was the mindset too, Social Distortion. Offspring was an interesting one because we tried to play the clubs, but they blew up so big.
Smashed.
Yeah, it became dangerous to play a small club. I remember, I think it was Nick in Chicago. We were going to play the Metro. I think he moved it to Vic and then had to move it to Aragon because it was so big, so fast.
Yeah, that band made it from the club to UIC Pavilion.
Yeah, and it was not an overnight success. They'd been around for quite a while. We wanted to build, but it blew up. And
because they were supporting Pennywise right before Smash came out.
I remember that. I remember seeing the Pennywise.
That album dropped on that Pennywise tour, but the guys were heading home and they were going to take a break before they were going to go back out.
They were, and we had a little Los Angeles started to break the music earlier. it just spread. And that was a time punk rock had a resurgence in that year where you did have Green Day, you had Offspring, you had Rancid, and it was great to be right in the middle of that. For a punk rock kid, this was like a dream come true. Yeah.
Dude, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I'm honored that you included me. Thank you so much.
Larry's a longtime friend. So thrilled that he was able to join us here on Promoter 101.
Alex Viscasil, Live Nation Canada, and I'm on Promoter 101.
The quote of the week comes to us from Motley Crue's Tommy Lee. When you're playing upside down, it takes twice the strength. We just don't have enough quotes from Motley Crue on the podcast. I think we are going to need to rectify that soon.
Let's get on with Doc McGee and get some inside quotes going here, Dan.
This is Andrea Johnson from ICM Partners, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
That'll do it. That wraps up our broadcast day. Thanks for everyone who tuned in to episode 152 of Promoter 101. And of course, to our amazing guests from Fanscape, Larry Weintraub, and from Always On, Scott Osburn. Thanks for coming out on the podcast. We want to know what you thought of the podcast. Hit us up with an email, steiny@promoter101.net. That goes to both Dan and I. If you miss us and you just want to catch up, we want to hear from you.
We'll be back this Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific. That's 8 p.m. on the coast. Greenwich Mean Time, that's going to be midnight for you motherfuckers over the pond.
And on Thursday, we're going to feature an interview from the Vice President of Business Development at the Charity Network, Nicole Carson.
Love Nicole. So excited she's going to be on the podcast. And it's long overdue. We talked about good causes on this podcast because the music industry does so much good, and we've yet to shine a spotlight on that at all, Luke, and I think it's long overdue. Shame on us.
Shame.
We should be ashamed of ourselves.
Shame.
For shame. But we're getting it right now. Nicole's going to be here, and she's going to teach us all how to do a little good, which is long overdue. Hey, until then, we're wishing you sold-out shows for the week to come.
Cheers.
Call your mother.
Alex Bewley at WME, and I'm on Promoter 101.